People who quit their jobs on the first day. What was your "I'm outta here" moment? I was 17 and working precast concrete. Refused to use a rusted to sit ladder. Supervisor called me a fussy. Got up about 7 rungs before his foot went through one. Heard his foot snap as he fell. I called an ambulance and walked to my car in the parking lot. On the first day of working at Amazon warehouse, the managers broke down to everyone how a 15-minute break works there. Walking to the break room is 2.5 minutes, 10 minutes of actual break and then 2.5 minutes to go back to your stations. It took me 2.5 minutes to walk to my car and I took a forever break. Summer job working for a landscape architect. Got to the job site and he asked me to dig a hole in some rocky dirt. I asked for a shovel. He didn't have one. I asked for a hand spade. He didn't have one. He told me to just dig the hole with my bare hands and then he drove off to another site, leaving me completely alone. I dug for a little bit and then said, "Frock this," and left. Had the job specified that I needed to supply my own tools, I could have, but it didn't, and I wasn't going to work for somebody that expected folks to dig through hard, rocky soil with their hands. I used to work at a craft store as a cashier, but quit when I moved. Ended up going back a couple years later to make some extra cash, but this time in the framing department. During the interview they swore up and down I would only ever be a backup cashier because I said I refused to have full cashier shifts. First shift after interview is listed as framing, but I'm put on cash and told that actually most of my shifts would be cash since they'd found someone else for framing. I spent the next 6 hours giving everyone who came to my register 20% off of everything and then never went back. Wasn't exactly the first day, but I didn't show up after the second shift. It was a rather popular cafe chain in my country. I was hired to work in the kitchen as a cook along with another senior cook. Let's put aside the fact that I had zero cooking knowledge whatsoever. The senior cook was leaving the kitchen every 5 minutes to smoke. So there I am, alone in the kitchen. Orders are printing fast, and I'm standing there not sure what to do first. And the waitress comes over yelling at me to cook. Sit, I don't have any business cooking. Definitely not on my own. Later on the senior cook told me they had at least 2 rats running around the kitchen. Showed me they pooped on a plate. I never came back and I'm glad the place got shut down. Answered an ad in the paper. This was the mid-90s. What seemed to be an office job, making sales calls when I was in college. Did a phone interview and was called back for an in-person interview. When I go to the interview I'm led into a room with about 50 other people and a small stage at the front of the room. We're all somewhat confused as to what is going on. Finally a guy gets on the stage and informs us that we've been selected for the opportunity to sell Cutco. Me and 2/3 RDS of the rest stood up and walked out. I noped out of an interview one time. Thanked them at the end and said it wasn't for me. Those interviewing, management level folks, started arguing with each other in front of me during the interview. I figured, if this is the vibe at the management level, then I sure as hell don't want to be your employee. Restaurant. Swept under my station when we were closing. Giant brown pile came out with broom from under low boy fridge. Pile began to scatter. It was hundreds of roaches. Never returned. When I burned my hands all night on the 2 hot plates as a food runner. They wouldn't let me use towels to carry them and said I just had to get used to it. Nope. I answered an ad for a babysitting job. I was already working on a casual basis, but it was sporadic, so I thought some after-hours babysitting would be welcome extra cash. The couple were both in the military and proceeded to tell me that I would be staying in the spare room and looking after their 6-month-old child around the clock as well as doing the housework. I would have 1 day off every 2 weeks. They said it is cash in hand so I could sign onto the dole unemployment benefit to make up the rest of the money. I left on the spot. They wanted a live-in housemaid and nanny, not a babysitter, and they were not able to pay for one. Why they thought it was up to me to illegally collect the dole to subsidize them I don't know. Had an orientation for an alarm company. Next day manager calls and says don't worry about going into the office and to meet at Planet Hollywood. They like to get to know the employees better over lunch. Next day I go into the office and another employee whom I had not met says, "You must be Scandal 929. I was like, huh? They responded, light-skinned, pretty boy. Is how the manager described me. In same conversation I found out no one else had ever been invited for a get to know you lunch. I'm out. I was hired to be a waitress, which has a lower hourly wage due to tips. The entire shift they had me wash dishes in the sink, but paid me waitress wages. A few months later the restaurant was investigated for a number of fraud activity. It was a small independent insurance agency in 2006. My first day there the owner, a true fossil, said email and fax were strictly forbidden as he only believed in communication in person, by phone, or through mail. Left for lunch and never went back. I couldn't imagine the inefficiency I'd have dealt with had I stayed. They ultimately closed their doors, so it was definitely the right decision. I interviewed for a professional marketing assistant. and got the job straight away. I was under the impression that I would be an assistant to the man I was interviewed by. When I showed up for my first day, the same waiting room I was in the previous day was full of people. I quickly learned that we were all hired, and that I would be a door-to-door salesperson selling some pretty useless shit. I spent my entire day inside a Starbucks applying for other jobs and went home. Got paid, but never went back. Got what was supposed to be a prestigious political internship that came with a security clearance and everything. Found out at orientation that the part-time internship was really 40 to 60 hours, unpaid, and that no intern had gone on to work with the organization and weren't really given a leg up for other federal posts. We were supposed to facilitate meetings with heads of state, coordinate conferences, and assist the actual employees with composing published research papers for which we would not be credited. They were definitely drinking their own Kool-Aid, so I bounced right on out of there. When the microwave in the lunchroom was coin-activated. Restaurant line chef. Worked a 12-hour shift. Was given 2 breaks of about 10 to 15 minutes each. Burned my hand numerous times because they gave me plates that came right from the oven and never said a word. End of the shift, I told the head chef I was done. He called me soft and said I was the 3rd person to quit on him after a day. I said, "Maybe it's the way you treat people." I wasn't the person, but I was training a new guy at a movie theater. A customer asked for extra butter. She was nice and normal. Not a mean or rude customer. The kind I would pay to handle all day long. He puts the popcorn tub down. Says I'm going to the bathroom. Takes off his apron and walks out the front door and never came back. Salesman. For Kirby Vacuums. First sale call was to a single elderly woman who was supporting her son in hospital. They got us in the door by offering a free carpet clean as a demonstration. The supervisor training me pushed and pushed to make the sale until this old woman was in tears. Just as she was about to sign the paperwork, I asked if she actually wanted to vacuum, and she said it was lovely but she couldn't afford it. I took the paperwork away from her and said not to worry. Outside I told the supervisor I quit, to which he replied I would have been fired anyway. No love lost. I hung around for half an hour playing on my phone to make sure the supervisor left because he was a real piece of work. It was a petrol station and the manager wanted me to work for free until I had learned their computer systems to what he deemed a satisfactory extent. I agreed to do it because I needed a job. And he brought me in at 7 a.m. on my first day. However, he was not present to go through the training with me, so I was just standing around kind of helping out on the forecourt but not really knowing what I should be doing, not learning anything. After about an hour and a half without the manager showing up or anyone training me on anything, I decided that I wasn't going to continue to be taken advantage of and told the cashier to pass on the message to the manager that I had quit. It was my first day at Five Guys. It was around 10:30 p.m. and they told me it was time to clock out, despite not having finished closing. I then worked until almost midnight. I did not return. Worked at McDonald's years ago in their assistant manager training program. Had gotten hired right out of the army. First day I met with the store manager where I'd be working and training, and noted that she spent majority of the time doing entry-level work and then working OT to do store manager work. She told me this was pretty common because of the type of people they'd hire. Her office was a counter and she told me she had bought a chair but corporate made her remove it. She was really nice, worked her ass off and was intelligent, and told me she'd been at McDonald's for 10 years. I imagined working my ass off only to be told I couldn't have a chair, and decided that night I wasn't going to work for a company like that. Gas station. The manager gave me a weird vibe. I made it through the first day but didn't go back. Found out later he cornered another girl in the back of the store and she had to fight her way out. Trust your gut. 2 times. Once I applied for and got a telemarketing job. I didn't know what it entailed. After an hour I knew it was a terrible fit. Auto-dialing people during their dinners. Trying to sell them stuff they didn't want. Reading a horrible script while sitting in a soulless gray cubicle. I got up, went to the manager, apologized and said it wasn't a good fit for me. He seemed understanding. Another time I attended a "make easy money at this job" seminar, and it turns out it was selling knives door to door. IDK if I technically quit, or just noped out at the end of it. Young and naive right out of college took a marketing job. My interview was great. Nothing shady seemed to be going on and no immediate red flags. After 4 hours of training, my first day consisted of going door to door in a suburban town trying to sell cable to older people. We were told to dress for business, so I'm hiking around for miles in my best skirt, suit jacket and heels. Hours were from 9 to 5. But we didn't get back to the business until well after 10 p.m. Not to mention, the person I was shadowing was able to make a sale to an older gentleman who seemed to have memory issues. I noped the frock right out of there. Electronics store. My first day we had to attend a class where they teach people how to upsell folks. Basically walked you through ignoring what they ask you for and using their ignorance of the equipment against them. I thought that was really scuzzy. Then they went on to tell us about a commission-style bonus program that basically forced employees to upsell everyone. When we took the break for lunch that first day, I peaced out and went home. Never got paid for those 4 hours. But I never regretted bouncing on that. Worked in a hotel for a day. No one told me where anything was. Got chewed out for it. Guests enjoying their meals told me to pay no mind. I was doing a good job and that my boss is a cunt. I told the manager that I was quitting and wouldn't be doing the next shift. I arrived the next day, returning a work uniform, and my supervisor approached me and yelled at me for being late. I told her I already quit, but if I was working, technically I was 5 hours early for my shift. Absolute nutcases. They hired me to work full-time. I had interviewed to work full-time. I was trying to quit a horrible job, and this job was on the other end of town. I needed enough money for the bus pass. And to make up the difference and more of quitting my old job, they hired me and showed me my schedule. I showed up for my first day. Things are going good. Then my manager called me in, sat me down, and explained that they'd have to cut me down to 15 hours a week because they'd hired too many frocking people. I explained, painfully, that I had to take a bus an hour each way and wouldn't be able to pay rent or food after that. He said I could always hold out and hope people quit. I told him he could start with me. Took off my apron and stormed out in tears. I was hired at a chain restaurant to be a hostess. I was so excited because my last job was washing dishes, and because of my eczema, I had to quit. It was too painful to do that job. So, I arrived at my new job dressed up to be a hostess, and those MFERS took me back to the kitchen to do dishes because the dishwasher just quit. I noped out of there real fast. I didn't quit, but it was an interview many years ago. The position was for an admin assistant. I got to the place and it was in the back of a strip mall, kind of. Just a small parking lot and a forest. I go in to interview and the guy tells me it is in fact not an admin position but an alarm system cold calling position. I immediately knew he was wasting my time and his, but finished it out. He told me there would be a lot of evenings just him and I working. I don't think so. He also said that he loves to reward his team for good sales and always takes them to Mexico. I walked out and told my husband, BF at the time. There was no way I was taking that. I got a call for a second interview but never picked up the phone. So sketch. I technically quit before my first day. I got hired at a well-known gift store. I was hired with the understanding that I would work Saturdays, Sundays, and a grand total of 8 hours a week, so 2 4-hour shifts, also at minimum wage. Not a problem with me. Done that before. I would just pick up a part-time job for rest of the week. Nope. Apparently that wasn't allowed. The manager thought that was a horrible thing and disrespectful to her. I should only work for them and only them, and I should have better control over my money if I can't survive on $64 a week before taxes. Yeah. Didn't show up cause frock that noise. She called pissed off that I wouldn't show up to such opportunity. It was a sandwich shop in college. I got the flu before my first day. Told them I was sick. They said come in anyway, it's just training. Then they had me making sandwiches. No gloves, runny nose, coughing and everything. I left in under an hour and didn't eat there again. Phew at that. It was a waitress gig for a local restaurant. I finished my first day, then was told that training would continue for 6 weeks. While I was in training, all of the tips I got had to be given to my trainer. I was being paid less than $2 an hour. I called the next day and said it wasn't gonna work out. My very first job was at a little drive-in restaurant close to my high school. I showed up to work the first day. The lady said I had to pay her $50 for training. She showed me around the place and said that my pay would be $4.50 per hour as a car hop. This was in 2010. And all the tips I made went into a bucket with all the other girls' tips. At the end of the night, she counted up tips, kept 20% for herself and split the rest up evenly among every employee. Also, part of our job was 1 day a week we had to spend 4 hours cleaning her house. It seemed super shady. I literally left after listening to her go over all these rules. My dad was pissed until I explained. And another girl confirmed and my dad agreed I did the right thing. I went into orientation for a new job as truck driver. Obviously you know you will be away from home, but this was city. Out on the road 30 days at a time. Then only 36 hours. Or 5 days at home. You only work 6 out of 7 days. So 4 of those days you just sit at the truck stop unable to move. And not getting paid. Can't bring a pet of any type. So I would only be home 18 days a year. On the road for 347 days a year. And unpaid for 52 of them. The no pets rule was the final straw for me. I will not be out 30 days alone with no little friend to keep me sane. I no pet out of there. I was a cashier at this cafeteria for a large company in my town. The people that worked at the company would put their tips in a bucket and the people made a lot of money, so there was like 10s and 20s. The manager of the cafe wouldn't let me have any of tips because she said that cashiers couldn't be trusted, so she would ship the tip money to a church in El Paso. I immediately knew that this was a load of bullshit and I just never went back. It's also illegal, I think. To collect money for one thing but do something else with it without disclosing what it is for. Like all these jobs in here are service-based jobs. And yet people can't seem to figure out why the service industry isn't coming back to work. When at the daily meeting a manager said if they found out who put a paper bag with human excrement in an employee's locker. My very first job was at a buffet restaurant that was popular with senior citizens and known for their desserts. I was asked to get another coconut cream pie from the back, and as I was getting it out of the fridge, another employee bumped into me and I dropped it on the floor. Pie side down. This employee's, someone who'd worked there for years. Solution was to just scrape off all the whipped topping and replace it. I was horrified they served pie that had been on the extremely dirty floor and never went back. Edit to add. Since you all are guessing, it was a lone local placent at any of these chains you're guessing. Guy was unloading a skid steer, a bobcat, off the trailer and didn't have his bucket in the right position, so he began to tilt backwards. As I took a big step back to avoid getting crushed, the other guy outside the bobcat actually stepped forward and put his hands up to try and prevent the several thousand-pound machine from tipping over. It didn't end up tipping over. But I decided I was too smart to work for the place and I didn't want to get injured by my colleagues' buffoonery. Warehouse job. Putting stickers on file folders or some such garbage seemed pointless, and the floor was just a mass of these same stickers. So they were either falling off constantly or people were shirking work by emptying their quota onto the floor. Went to ask the boss a question. Found him asleep in an empty office. He'd taken off a sock and had draped it over his eyes to block out the light. On my way out the door, the other girl who had started that day said, "Please come back. Don't leave me alone here." I couldn't stop laughing. Second day actually, but the person who was training me at a McDonald's during the summer in college was so inconsistent and would forget about me. Second day she asked me what time it is. I pointed out the wall clock and said the time. She goes, "Oh, I can't read them fancy clocks." Made me sad more than anything. I grew up in a very rural, poor area. But also I realized that she wasn't having an off day with her city training and would be my supervisor. Didn't go back my third day. Took a summer job at a textile plant and the trainer said, "Forget about taking a break if you want to stay caught up." Not the first day, but the first week. Took a job at a coffee stand in a mall. Had worked at coffee places before. And this one was super high traffic, which boded well for tips. At the end of my third shift, person who closed the till had come up short, and was like, "Oh damn. Guess the two of us will be docked from our tips." I was like, absolutely not. That's not how that works. Manager comes over and says the same, and I was pretty sure that's illegal. She insisted, so I was like, okay, well, it's for sure illegal. And I'm not coming back. She got very flustered and upset and started talking about how she's a business owner and people should be more responsible. It was $10 short, and I didn't have the patience for a predatory manager. No AC in the delivery truck in West Texas. Eat a dig. Not me, but I was training a new lifeguard. After our shift was mandatory staff training for our entire crew, where we practice rescues. Once she found out we actually had to practice and go in the water, she just walked out, not really sure what kind of job she thought she had signed up for. Started a new job unloading shipping containers and was told they had to be empty by midday. This was imperative because a new one was going to arrive in the early afternoon. It was a two-man job if we both worked our asses off to get it done. Boss says, also your offsider is off work today. You will need to get this cleared." I just walked out. Even if it was a trial by fire, I wasn't interested in working for these cunts. Frock that. Shared tips based on seniority. Nope. A 3-hour presentation and you need to commit $100 to start your life-changing journey to make money and be your own boss. No thank you. Went into an Italian restaurant for my first day of work and I got 3 red flags on the very first day. 1, the manager said he had lots of hours for me and getting shifts would be no problem. Every single other employee told me that they were struggling for hours and that they had no idea why they hired me. 2, everyone said the manager was in his hole. Even the customers. 3, it was my first day there. And I actually had to teach the woman training me how to do 1 or 2 things. I had a job for 1 day selling home security equipment door to door. The whole idea was basically to make it seem like you're doing them a service and then lock the customer into 5-year contracts. My supervisor and I were in this one home of a family that hardly some English. The father said they had been struggling with finances, but my supervisor kept pushing it on them. And the customer seemed like he didn't fully understand what was going on. I couldn't in good conscience take these people that were already struggling and put them in a worse position. Fast food chain. I was 17. I found out during training that the place had been robbed 3 times in the past month and 1 employee was seriously injured. Not worth the $5 per hour. Edit. For those asking about the pay and the time, this was the U.S. state of Georgia in 2004. Got a job as a cashier at a grocery store in FL, which I had just moved to from out of state a few days before. Was specifically told that I wouldn't have to bag, stock shelves, etc. First day it gets slow. Manager asks me to collect carts. Okay. Remember being told I wouldn't have to do carts. But I wanted to show initiative. I get outside and it's raining sideways. Like monsooning sideways. I'd never seen it rain that hard in my life. I walk back inside and ask if I can wait until the rain lets up, so I don't freeze to death when I come back inside and work another 6 hours in the air conditioning. Was told if I didn't collect carts immediately I would be fired. I dropped my smock and walked out the door, never to return again. Frock you Publix. I worked in one jail, and on my first day whoever runs the investigations of prisons busted my sergeant and 5 other COs for bringing drugs and frocking male inmates. Didn't even wait till the end of my shift. Got a job at a saw, lumber mill. My first shift started at midnight. My boss met me at the entrance, lead me through the mill and out a back door. He told me stand next to this little opening in the wall, and when a piece of wood comes out, place it neatly in the stack on this big pallet. He left pieces of wood, 1x2 by 10 feet. Started shooting out every few seconds. It was all I could do to keep up. It started to rain, then poured. A fork truck driver went past and I asked him to tell my boss that I needed a raincoat. He just laughed. I stayed about an hour, then just walked around the building and out the front gate. Florist shop. I was 19, hired to do deliveries. I was observing the owner while he showed me how something was done in the back room. I had my hands in my pockets, just to keep them out of the way. I was a very quiet, yes sir, no sir kid. He yelled at me that hands in pockets were disrespectful and physically grabbed my arms and pulled my hands out. Nope. Not worth $5. 15 per hour. Never came back, except to demand payment for that first day. When I walked in, his old hag wife yelled, "Roy, that boy is back." I got my $20. First day at an energy trading exchange as network support. 20 years ago. Did my shift of 8 to 5. Left around 5:30 only to get a phone call 30 minutes later demanding I return because a user moved their equipment on their own and unapproved, and shocker, it didn't work when he plugged it back up. And that if I didn't return immediately I was fired. Told them no thanks. I quit. I love what I do, but I don't lie for what I do. Adios mofo. It was a hole in the wall tile company. There was a mix that clearly states, do not mix in enclosed space. Toxic. And they just did that anyways. I was just like, these motherfrockers are stupid. But I need this job. If I don't get some cash soon I'm gonna be homeless. So I wrapped something over my face. Then later that day a guy with a split eye, and I'm talking a piece of concrete, had flown up and took this mon's eye out, was using the jackhammer. No eye protection. His foot placed directly next to the damn hammer piece. Barely paying attention. I got a call the next day for a sit grocery job. I took it. Not my first day, but my second. Fellow coworker touched me and I said, "Please don't touch me. It makes me uncomfortable." And he proceeded to step closer and said to our manager, "Hey, Joey, touch her, she doesn't like it." Manager's eyes got so big and he told the idiot that he could be fired and sued for sexual harassment. I didn't go back. It was my first job. I was 15. Was hired as a server, sure, no problem. Got there, they were like, "Nope, you're doing dishes." After 8 hours of dishes I went home. I'm not a dishwasher and I was told I'd be serving. Never went back, never got paid. Didn't care, the couple running it were a bunch of jerks anyway. I showed up. Was 15 minutes into orientation and paperwork. Regional corporate came in and sacked everyone. Sans me. I was still the new hire. The regional came up to me and said, "This never happens. We'd love for you to stay." 2 hours later the regional has to leave for another location. The trainee from another branch that had come to run the branch I was at says, "They're about to sack everyone there too." I was like, okay, this isn't for me at all, and left. The regional called me the next day and asked me to reconsider. I thanked them for the courtesy, but nope. Edit. When a company shows you who they are, believe them. First day at Burger King. I had to clean the men's bathroom. I go in there and there was poop everywhere. Next to the toilet, on the ceiling, the walls, and even the sink. I quickly walked out the bathroom, didn't even clock out, and just left the store and went home. I wasn't going to clean that. Was awful. Not me, but a friend. Started working at a local coffee shop. And on his first day, during his training, the owner told him that whenever a person pays with a credit card but doesn't fill out the tip and total parts of the receipt before signing, that he should fill in a 30% tip. I'm fairly certain that's an illegal action. And so was he. He quit on the spot when she told him to do that. He told me about it, and I never went back to that place. I also now always mark out that part of the receipt if I don't leave a tip. Dishwasher at a restaurant chain. Imagine being extremely overworked, undervalued, no breaks, constantly moving. Dishes came so quick the main guy was hardly washing and plates went out with old dried food, slippery floors, dirty ass water, everyone being angry. No ped the fuck out of there. The job listing said good pay but was very vague about what I would actually be doing. The interview was the same. On morning the first day we were told to practice this script on selling solar panels. Then at around 10:30, we were broken into groups of 4 and we drove 2 hours out to country Victoria, Australia, to rural towns where we would go door to door trying to sell solar panels. Side note, the driver of the car was on his phone, watching Netflix whilst driving. Got home at 6 p.m. Rang up the bloke, quit immediately. Told him not to worry about paying me for that day of work. I have type 1 diabetes. Was working at a Wendy's. The manager didn't believe me when I told them my blood sugar was low and that I needed to get a sugary drink from the drink machine to get my blood sugar up because I'm too skinny to be diabetic. They thought I was a slacker. Bye. I had a week-long labor job. I was told I would be carrying decking lumber up a few stairs. What they didn't say was that the lumber was 6x6 treated lumber, so each load we were carrying was 150 pounds. And those couple of steps were 88 up from a lakeside property. I managed to survive 8 hours, but there was no way possible I could carry a few more tons of lumber up those stairs. I had to go to physio after to fix my knees. Day 2 I quit. I got hired at a restaurant in New Jersey as a server, but on the first day they had me working as a bus person, the server's assistant. And I was not completely happy, but it was a job and I needed it. Second day. Same thing. That day was September 11th, 2001. I remember standing there looking at the TV in the bar area in complete horror and asked if I could leave to see if my family and friends were okay. They said no. I walked out the door and never went back. Told me on day 1 I'd be making $10 an hour instead of 13. Only one other employee working there and he was about 40 to 50. He said hi, then asked if he could get $5 for a pack of cigarettes. Then I was told I would be making deliveries with my own car when I was working the kitchen, and I'd have to work open close every day, and was openly told I'd have no chance of a raise because the store didn't make enough money. Boss lady turned around and I no-ped right out of there faster than a pig in a slaughterhouse.